Hey guys, Trey here. Wanted to do a forecast discussion this morning on the potential severe weather event today across parts of the Midwest. We've got an enhanced risk out for southern Wisconsin into southern Minnesota and the northern half of Iowa, with a slight risk surrounding that extending all the way back into eastern Nebraska. Haven't had much time to do these videos in the last couple months, but found a few minutes this morning, so wanted to put one of these videos out. Going to keep it on the quick side, but wanted to discuss today's event. There is a pretty decent tornado threat with these storms, as well as a damaging wind and large hail threat. So let's go ahead and get started. Take a look at the satellite picture this morning. Not really a whole lot to pick out. It's summertime in the continental United States, so the pattern is going to be fairly dominated by high pressure in the south. I'm actually in Arizona now, and you can see some storms firing up this morning across the lower deserts of Arizona. So if you hear some thunder outside, that is what it is. But big ridge of high pressure here. We'll go to our 500 millibar map real quick here. It's actually been flattened here by this sort of piece of energy, this sort of long wave trough that's centered somewhere up in Canada with this little perturbation here. There was a big ridge here the last week, 2 weeks. That's kind of been flattened a little bit thanks to this little this trough that's extending into the northern half of the country right now. You can see on the radar here there's a little bit of convection going on across the target area for this morning. If we go back to satellite and zoom in here, we can see there's some actually pretty potent thunderstorms ongoing right now across southern Minnesota, northern Iowa, with some pretty decent overshooting tops here over the last hour or so. If we go to the radar, we can see a nice cluster of thunderstorms there, sort of developing bow echo, it appears, across northern Iowa, moving into southern Minnesota. That will move off to the northeast throughout the morning. You can see some severe warnings there already as well. So this is going to play a role today in the severe weather threat in a couple of ways. First, what is this going to do to the atmosphere behind it? It is just a little before 8:30 a.m. out here. This is going to take a little while to traverse this region. I would think there's going to be enough clearing behind this to not have to worry about it. This is going to be early enough that this will move off, and we'll get some clearing behind this. You can see on the satellite map here, if we zoom out back to, let's go to the regional sector here, you'll notice there's a fair amount of clearing behind this already. Let me pause it here. You can see there's some cloudiness behind it, but there are some decent patches of clearing across South Dakota and Nebraska. That should follow this complex as it moves off to the east and northeast. The second way this will affect the forecast for today is this has the potential to put out an outflow boundary. As it moves off, it will sort of drape an outflow boundary, something like that. And where that sets up could be where we see the highest threat for severe storms this afternoon. That is yet to be seen. If we take a look at our surface map here, let me refresh it quickly here. You don't really see a whole lot here, but you can see definitely where this complex is moving through. This kind of little bit of chaos here in the surface map, but we don't see really a well-defined surface low here. Maybe you can see here in the northern half of Minnesota and Wisconsin, we see weak northerly winds shifting to southwesterly winds here, and southerly and southeasterly winds here across Iowa. Or maybe a weak frontal zone in there connected to a low pressure surface low somewhere up in Canada, but it's fairly weak. But again, this has the potential to put out an outflow boundary somewhere across northern Iowa into southern Minnesota and southern Wisconsin. I think that is going to be the main player here in our severe weather threat for this afternoon. Let's go back out west a little bit, and we can see pretty well-defined surface low here across eastern Colorado into far western Kansas. That is going to move off to the northeast today. That'll has the chance to affect our surface pattern here across the target area for this afternoon. What that'll do is that'll help strengthen the winds a little bit. Pretty tight pressure gradient out here. We'll go to our mesoanalysis map, look at our sea level pressure. You can see decent pressure gradient out here, so the surface winds across Kansas a little bit stronger than they are up in the target area right now. As that surface low moves off to the northeast, that should help these surface winds sort of remain backed, and maybe strengthen a little bit. So our low-level shear is going to strengthen a little bit. Where this outflow boundary sets up could also strengthen our low-level shear as well. But again, where that outflow boundary sets up is yet to be seen. We're going to have to monitor the surface map throughout the day to see where that outflow boundary sets up. And if it stalls, if we keep getting convection behind the boundary, that'll continue to push the outflow boundary to the south, potentially undercutting storms that form on it, and lessening the tornado threat. So we'll have to see if we get the outflow boundary, one, where it sets up, and two, where it if it stalls. That was a problem with some of the severe weather events this spring, is we had good outflow boundary setups, but the outflow boundaries would continue to surge southward due to convection continuing to the north of it. But we'll have to see how that plays out through the afternoon. All right, let's go back to our surface map real quick here and show you how the moisture is doing. Very solid moisture here, 70s dew points here in southern Iowa, down into the eastern portion of Kansas, into western Missouri. So our moisture supply very, very good, at least at the surface here. Take a look at some soundings here. This is the 12Z Minneapolis sounding. You can see already very solid CAPE, a very unstable atmosphere, over 3,000 mixed layer CAPE here at Minneapolis, St. Paul this morning. Fairly long, straight hodograph. So that would tell us why this is a severe sort of thunderstorm complex here. There is some shear already in place, but again, as that surface low ejects to the northeast, we may get some strengthening of the winds here in the low levels. And we're also going to get a low-level jet to increase throughout the day as well. First, we'll look at our 500 millibar map again here. Once again, that sort of broad long wave trough, little piece of energy right here. You can see that little kink in the flow there, a little area of enhanced winds. That's what's helping to spark this complex of thunderstorms here. And that'll likely be the player today as that moves off to the east. We'll still have sort of broad, sort of easterly, more zonal flow here with this sort of low amplitude wave here. But here's our 850 millibar map, and you can see a very, very strong low-level jet here centered across the central and southern plains, stretching into the Midwest. Broad surface low, broad 850 millibar circulation here is what is helping to keep this low-level jet in place. And as the day moves on, we'll take a look at the models here in a second, but that'll move off to the northeast, and we'll get that maintenance of the low-level jet here into the Midwest. That'll help enhance the low-level shear, enhance the curvature in these photographs, giving the potential for supercells this afternoon, wherever that outflow boundary sets up. Let's go back here, take a look. Let's see what we can take a look at. 700 millibars for any short waves here, and you can see a couple very well-defined short wave here, sort of coincident with that 850 millibar circulation we saw right in here. There's one definitely in here, I think across southern Nebraska, and this short wave in here, this little kink in the flow, is what is helping to fuel these thunderstorms here this morning across northern Iowa. So we've got good moisture in place, at least at the surface. And you can see there's a little bit of dry air aloft here, but these lacerates aloft all the way toward the tropopause here, very steep. So would not be surprised to see some hail with these early morning storms as they feed on this wealth of instability here. Surface inversion may keep these storms elevated, but again, some heating behind this main complex this afternoon should help erode that inversion in the low levels, and we should get an uncapped atmosphere by maybe early afternoon. This is not a whole lot of sin here, not a very big inversion here at the surface. Only sin of only minus 37 mixed layer here, so would not expect this cap to be difficult to break this afternoon, especially with some heating. So I think by early afternoon, depending on how the behavior of this complex, how fast it moves out, are there storms that redevelop here along the southern edge of this thing, along the outflow boundary? That'll again play a part in what we see here this afternoon. But would expect our environment to be uncapped by early afternoon. Let's go to the NAM here. This is the 6Z NAM. The 12Z NAM is not quite in yet, so we'll have to settle for the 6Z NAM. But we'll move ahead. This is 12Z. You can see that perturbation there in the flow. That's just helping to, again, set off these thunderstorms here in northern Iowa. That continues to move off and sort of strengthen throughout the day. The winds strengthen associated with that little shortwave. By 18Z, you see the main sort of axis of the trough and this shortwave moving into southern Minnesota with strong winds associated with it. And by 21Z, we get that to move into Wisconsin. And that moves off to the northeast throughout the evening as the trough kind of takes on a little bit more of a positive tilt here throughout the day, but it's not going to matter too much. So just based on this, I would think the main forcing is going to be associated with this lead shortwave. I think the outflow boundary is going to be the main focus here, as sort of this main piece of energy moves off to the northeast rather quickly throughout the afternoon. But this whole area going to be under the influence of this sort of belt of stronger winds aloft. So let's look at 850 millibars here. If this loads here, yep, you can see right now this is at 6Z, 12Z, strong low-level jet as we saw on our meta-analysis map, moves off to the northeast, and we get fairly strong winds. That low-level jet re-strengthens as the early evening approaches. This is 21Z. You can see very strong winds here. South-southwesterly winds of 40 to 50 knots, 55 knots even here across southern Minnesota, southern Iowa. That creeps into Wisconsin by 0Z and even strengthens a little pocket of 60, 65 knots there into western Wisconsin. So this tells me our low-level shear is going to be pretty solid here this afternoon. Let's look at our surface map here and our moisture. Again, fairly nebulous pattern here in the Midwest, but this surface low here across eastern Colorado going to move off to the northeast throughout the day. You can see by 21Z it's across southern Minnesota, so I would think this is going to be a little bit tricky here since we're going to have this complex move through. I think this makes me think there will be two areas of concern here. Possibly one here on the backside of this complex here in southern Minnesota. Redevelopment in the clearing behind this complex. The wind profiles, if the NAM is correct here, should be the best here across southern Minnesota, given the proximity to the surface low and the strength of the low-level jet in this area. Still have backed surface winds, southerly, south-southeasterly surface winds here into northern Iowa, going into southern Wisconsin. I think here would be our secondary sort of target along the outflow boundary. Here we still have, I think, a good wind profile here. Let's take a couple of soundings here. Let me zoom in real quick. Take a couple of forecast soundings for you here to show kind of a sample of the environment this afternoon if this loads. We go 1821. We'll take it at 21Z. You can see as we zoomed in here, very much backed surface winds. So if any storm can form in here, given the low-level jet, I think the photographs are going to be pretty nasty in here and a little bit maybe contaminated here, and that may be a product. Let's go to 0Z here into, we'll go into southern Wisconsin and see. And yeah, you can see just major photographs here. Storms are a little bit elevated. It looks like a little bit of contamination here. So there may be storms, a little bit of contamination from this early morning stuff that lingers into the afternoon here with this northern target. But if we can get surface-based storms here, that is just insane curvature to the hodograph. Strong right near the surface low. Very strong low-level jet. Look at that. Effective inflow storm relative helicity of almost 1,400. That is unheard of and frankly deadly if that were to verify. I think thankfully we're going to be, it looks like at least on the NAM here, we're going to be a little bit worked over from the morning stuff. So we may not have to worry too much about this northern area. Still need to keep our eyes out. You can see the instability here with the northern target is minimal. Let's go a little bit farther south out of where this morning stuff has taken place. And you can see the hodographs are still very solid here. Decent turning in the low levels. Lots of curvature in 0 to 1 kilometer layer. So would expect this is definitely a tornado hodograph right here. A little bit of an inversion left here according to the NAM at 21Z. We're saturated here a lot, so there may be some clouds here lingering, some elevated convection here showing up on this sounding, which is interesting. Let's go to 0Z and see if we can get a clear sounding out here. Southwest Wisconsin. Yeah, there we go. This is an uncontaminated sounding. So we do recover nicely here to the south. Decent curvature here, almost 400 0 to 3 SRH, effective inflow layer of 324 there. So nice curvature in the low levels there. Definitely expect a tornado threat with any discrete storms that can fire, especially along that outflow boundary. Near and maybe just to the north of that outflow boundary would be the favorite area for tornadic supercell development here. If we look at that sounding again, just to see, we do have some relatively steep lapse rates aloft. Nothing, out of the ordinary here or mind-boggling here, but there are steep enough lapse rates here for a large hail threat. And given the low-level jet here and the strong winds here in the mid levels, that could be transported downward pretty easily via downdrafts. So we could have a strong wind threat as well, especially as the storms kind of congeal through the afternoon. As far as storm mode goes, I think there should be a window for discrete storms, no doubt. But I think given the progressive nature of the surface low we looked at and how quickly it kind of moves off, you can see how quickly this thing is moving. And so it's a fairly progressive pattern here, especially with that 500 millibar sort of speed max moving off quickly as well. I think we may get perhaps a tendency for things to line out. And given that the initiating boundary may be this outflow boundary, oriented sort of east-west, and our bulk shear vectors oriented kind of the same way. We'll look at our 0 to 500 millibar shear vectors here. Move forward just a little bit. So our shear vectors here are basically out of the west. Would be roughly how our outflow boundary is oriented. So we may have a tendency for updrafts to congeal along that boundary. So storm mode may get a little messy here. May turn into more of a damaging wind threat through the evening. But I think there will be definitely a window for discrete storms. Let's take a look at the HRRR here. None of the other cams are in yet. Yeah, so we'll just have to take a look at the HRRR here for now, which, of course, we always like to look at multiple cams for confidence in our forecast. But all we have is the HRRR here. You can see that complex moving through here this morning. These storms stay fairly strong here on the leading edge of that throughout the early afternoon as they move into Wisconsin. And then we kind of get redevelopment here on the backside. So this was in that environment with 300 to 400 SRH here. We do see convection kind of stick around here. So maybe a hair skeptical in this region immediately behind the early round. But if we do get enough clearing here, I think this would be the main target. The farther north you go, closer to the surface low, the better the wind profiles are. So these would have a tornado threat, no question. Again, I think there's going to be a window. You can see sort of semi-discrete storms here, and then they finally congeal. We do get more development here back into central Iowa, but then we get a little bit more of a mess here moving across Wisconsin here throughout the nighttime hours. So pretty decent setup today. I think definitely chase worthy if you're in the area here. But so I do think discrete storms are a possibility for a couple hours here this afternoon. Again, going to have to see how this early morning stuff plays out, how early it moves out. It's all the way back here in central Iowa, so this area, not going to see this. Let's see how fast this is moving according to the warning. This is just the tip of the bow echo here, moving northeast at 50. So for simplicity's sake, let's say it's moving at 60 miles per hour. So we get, so we make the math easy, 60 miles in 60 minutes. So it's moving a mile a minute. So we've got till, let's say, this part of southeast Minnesota. Let's make it easy. 120 miles here to far southeast Minnesota, just west of La Crosse, Wisconsin. So if it's moving a mile a minute, it's going to take 120 minutes to get here, approximately, maybe a little bit more. So a little over 2 hours to get here. So by that time, it'll be almost lunchtime. So we'll have to see if this moves out early enough so we get destabilization behind this. So it's kind of a catch-22. I think that the better chance for destabilization going to be down here, or recovery going to be down here along the southern edge of the outflow boundary. However, the wind profiles may be a little bit better up here. So again, I do think there's going to be a window for discrete storms here across the enhanced risk area, along and sort of just to the north side of that outflow boundary, congealing to more of a messy mode here as the evening progresses. So potent setup today. If you're in the enhanced risk area and the slight risk area, keep your weather radios handy. Keep an eye on the sky. Could be there's pretty good potential for severe weather of some form this afternoon and evening across the region here. So if you're chasing, good luck today. Stay safe, and that's all I've got. We will see you in the next video.